My name is Harper Daniels, and just 3 days ago, I buried the love of my life. While I was picking out flowers for his casket, my brother-in-law was busy stealing our future. Even now, the words feel unreal in my mouth. 3 days ago, I was a wife, a partner, a woman planning her next weekend getaway with Ethan. Now I'm a widow, trying to remember how to breathe while navigating casseroles, condolences, and chaos. Ethan's death was sudden and cruel. One moment, he was teasing me about my terrible coffee-making skills, and the next, he was clutching his chest and collapsing on our kitchen floor. A heart attack at 39. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. The last few days have been a blur of decisions no one should ever have to make. Choosing between mahogany and oak caskets. Writing a eulogy when I could barely see through my tears. Smiling politely at people who kept telling me to be strong, as if strength could replace the man I'd lost. Ethan was my everything. We met when I was 28, a shy art teacher fresh out of grad school, and he was this charismatic, outdoorsy guy who knew how to make everyone in the room laugh. He introduced me to hiking trails, mountain sunsets, and a whole new kind of life I didn't even know I was missing. Together, we built our sanctuary, a secluded mountain lodge nestled deep in Silver Pine Valley, about 45 minutes from town. The kind of place where the world felt far away, and the only sounds were wind through the pines and the crackle of a fire in the stone hearth. It wasn't just a cabin. It was us, our anniversaries, our late-night talks, the dock where Ethan had proposed under a sky full of stars. Last year, Ethan did something I didn't fully understand at the time. He legally transferred the deed to me. Just in case something happens, he'd said with a wink. Ethan, you're being dramatic, I'd laughed. He kissed my forehead. Humor me. You never know with my family. Ethan's family, the Daniels, came from old money and older grudges. They'd never fully accepted me, the art teacher with a modest salary and a used car. I was always introduced as Ethan's wife, like my identity existed only through him. Margaret, my mother-in-law, once told me at a family dinner, "We're so glad Ethan found someone creative. It's good he has stability, someone to make a house feel like a home while he handles the important things." I'd smiled politely while dying a little inside. Now, with Ethan gone, that quiet disdain was about to turn into something far more dangerous. Before I tell you how I fought back, I want to pause for a moment. If you've ever had to stand up to family during the hardest moment of your life, please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps me share these stories of courage. The morning after the funeral, I woke up to a buzzing phone. My head pounded from lack of sleep and too many tears. The screen lit up with a message from Samantha, our neighbor near the lodge. Samantha: "Hey Harper, there's a moving truck at your cabin. Is everything okay?" My heart dropped. "What moving truck?" I hit call, and Samantha answered on the first ring. "Harper," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Someone's been there since dawn. It's a big U-Haul. I thought maybe you sent someone, but now I'm not so sure. I just wanted to check." My hands trembled. "Can you see who it is?" "Hard to tell from here, but I think I saw Liam's pickup." "Harper, I don't like this." Neither did I. The 45-minute drive to Silver Pine Valley felt like hours. My thoughts raced faster than my car down the winding mountain roads. Liam, Ethan's younger brother, had been oddly cheerful at the funeral, wearing a brand new suit despite claiming he was broke. He'd hugged me too long, whispering, "Don't worry, we'll take care of everything." At the time, I'd assumed he meant funeral arrangements. Now, his words felt like a threat. When I finally pulled up to the lodge, my stomach twisted. There it was, a massive U-Haul truck parked beside Liam's pickup. The front door, the door Ethan had built himself, stood wide open. I jumped out of my car, clutching my keys, and ran to the door. I jammed my key into the lock and froze. It didn't fit. The lock had been changed. Before I could process that, Liam appeared on the porch, sweating despite the cool mountain air. "Well, look who's here," he said with a too bright smile. "Didn't expect you so soon." "What are you doing, Liam?" My voice shook, equal parts grief and fury. "Helping you out," he said smoothly, as if that explained everything. "You've got a lot on your plate right now. I figured the least I could do was upgrade these old locks. They were ancient." He dangled a shiny new set of keys like a prize. "You changed my locks without asking?" "Family helps family," Liam said, as though that settled it. "Margaret thought you'd appreciate one less thing to worry about." My blood ran cold. Margaret was in on this. While I'd been picking out funeral flowers, they'd been plotting to take the one place Ethan and I had built together. I need those keys. Liam, I said evenly, holding out my hand. Of course, he replied, dropping a single key into my palm. I kept one. Mom has one. And Rita too, just for emergencies, you know. Safety reasons, the violation was complete. My home was no longer my own. As Liam turned back toward the lodge, humming like this was all perfectly normal. I remembered Ethan's warning. Liam takes what he wants unless someone stops him. Legally. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply got back in my car and drove away, outwardly calm while my mind burned with plans. Liam thought he'd won. But I wasn't retreating. I was preparing for battle. Mini hook. What Liam didn't know was that grief hadn't broken me. It had sharpened me, and soon he'd regret ever touching those locks. The day after finding Liam moving into my lodge, my phone started ringing before sunrise. Morning, Harper. Liam's voice boomed through the speaker, syrupy sweet. Just wanted to let you know I checked the pipes this morning. Winter's coming, and you don't want them to freeze. No need to worry, though. I've got it covered. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Liam, you don't need to. Family helps family, he interrupted smoothly. You've been through so much. You should focus on healing while I handle the lodge. It was the same phrase he'd used the day before, only now it sounded like a warning disguised as kindness. From that morning on, the calls never stopped. Every single day, Liam found a reason to reach out. Repairs, security, firewood deliveries. He acted as though the lodge belonged to him and I was just a guest. And it wasn't just Liam. Margaret, my mother-in-law, started showing up unannounced with casseroles and veiled criticisms. She'd sit at my kitchen table like a queen on her throne, tilting her head with exaggerated pity. Harper, dear, she said one afternoon, stirring sugar into her tea. I know you mean well, but a mountain property is complicated, especially for someone in your situation. My situation? I asked carefully. You know, she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. Widowed. Working full-time. No children to help. It's simply too much for one person to handle. I smiled tightly. I'm managing just fine. Margaret's lips thinned. Liam has experience with these things. He's already spent time at the lodge. You should let him take over, at least temporarily. For Ethan's legacy. That phrase, Ethan's legacy, was becoming their favorite weapon. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from Ethan's cousins and aunts, people who hadn't spoken to me in months suddenly reaching out. Harper, you're so strong, but you don't have to do this alone. Marcus says he's happy to manage the lodge for now. It's the smart thing to do. Family should stick together during hard times. Every message carried the same subtext. Step aside, or we'll make this difficult. A few days later, I went to the bank to finalize Ethan's accounts. As I waited in line, I overheard two tellers whispering. Liam Daniels was here earlier, one said. Asked about the mortgage on the Silver Pine Lodge. My head snapped up. There was no mortgage. Ethan and I had paid off the property years ago. The second teller frowned. Strange thing to ask about if it's already paid off. Strange didn't begin to cover it. Liam was fishing for information, trying to create a narrative that I couldn't afford the lodge. If he could convince people I was financially unstable, it would make his takeover seem noble instead of predatory. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. Confronting him now would play right into his hands. Instead, I remembered Ethan's advice. With my family, document everything. They rewrite history if you let them. From that moment on, my phone became my secret weapon. I started recording every conversation, Liam's calls, Margaret's visits, even casual comments from cousins. I labeled and stored each file like ammunition. But Liam wasn't just scheming in private. He was broadcasting his version of reality to the entire town. One afternoon, my coworker, April, showed me her phone at lunch. Look at this. Your brother-in-law is amazing. I took the phone, and my stomach twisted. There on Instagram was a photo of Liam on the lodge's deck, hammer in hand, grinning like a hero. The caption read, "Renovating the family lodge to honor Ethan's memory." Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments praising his generosity. That's not his lodge, I said carefully. April blinked. Oh, I just assumed since he's always there. And that was the genius of Liam's plan. By posting constant updates, sunsets from the dock, new furniture being delivered, barbecues with relatives, he was creating a new reality. A reality where the lodge wasn't mine, it was the Daniels family lodge. Before long, even strangers were parroting his narrative. At the pharmacy, the cashier smiled sympathetically. It's so kind of you to share your lodge with Liam during your grief. Not everyone could be that generous. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Generous? They were stealing from me, and somehow I was the one being erased. Even friends who meant well started assuming Liam was the rightful caretaker. They stopped asking me about the lodge altogether, speaking as though it had never been mine. It was like being gaslit on a community-wide scale. One evening, Margaret stopped by again. She set down a casserole dish with a dramatic sigh. "Harper, I wanted to let you know we've scheduled a family meeting this Saturday," she said, smoothing her skirt. "It's time we finalize plans for the lodge." "Finalize?" I asked, my voice calm even as my pulse pounded. "Yes," Margaret said, completely serious. "Liam's been doing so much for the property already. This meeting is really just a formality." I smiled sweetly. "Of course. I'll be there." Margaret's shoulders relaxed, certain she'd won. "Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable." As soon as she left, I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. They thought I was beaten, that I'd roll over and let them take everything Ethan left me, but they didn't realize I'd been recording their every word, tracking their every move. Let them gather. Let them speak freely. At that meeting, they'd walk right into my trap. Cliffhanger. As I packed my files and evidence into Ethan's old leather portfolio, a slow, determined smile spread across my face. They wanted a war over the lodge? Fine, but I wouldn't just fight back. I'd win. The night before the so-called family meeting, I was sitting on the couch trying to gather my thoughts when my doorbell rang. My stomach tightened. At 8:30 p.m., unannounced visitors could only mean trouble. When I opened the door, there stood Liam and Margaret side by side like a united front. Liam was holding a rolled-up set of papers under his arm, grinning like he was about to deliver good news. Margaret, on the other hand, wore the stiff, condescending smile I'd come to recognize as her we're-taking-control face. "Evening, Harper," Liam said cheerfully, breezing past me without an invitation. Margaret followed, sweeping into the living room like she owned the place. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Oh, nothing to worry about," Liam said. He plopped the papers onto my kitchen table and unfurled them dramatically. "We just wanted to go over the plans before tomorrow, so you aren't caught off guard." "Plans?" I echoed. "Yes," Margaret chimed in. "Liam's been working so hard to get everything in order. It's really remarkable, considering his grief." She patted his arm like he was a war hero returning from battle. On the table lay renovation blueprints, drawings of my lodge's deck, dock, and interior walls with handwritten notes about expansions and upgrades. Liam's voice took on the smug cadence of a contractor pitching to clients. "First, we're expanding the deck and installing a new security system. I've already spoken with a few crews, and they're ready to start next week. Margaret thought we should add a fire pit near the dock. Great for family gatherings." He looked up at me with a self-satisfied smile. "All of this will really increase the value of the property. You'll thank me later." I stared at the plans, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "You're renovating my lodge?" "Our family lodge," Margaret corrected smoothly, like it was a slip of the tongue. "Right," Liam said, chuckling. "We just assumed you'd want this done. You've got enough on your plate right now without worrying about maintenance and repairs." He said assumed like it was the most natural thing in the world, like my consent wasn't needed at all. I folded my arms. "Sometimes silence isn't surrender," I said quietly, my gaze locking with Liam's. "It's strategy." For a fraction of a second, I saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. But then he barked out a laugh. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll find out tomorrow," I said evenly. Margaret frowned. "Harper, there's no need for cryptic comments. We're all on the same team here." "Of course," I said, my tone as smooth as theirs. "I'll see you both at the meeting." They exchanged glances, clearly confused by my calmness, but they gathered their plans and left. Liam paused at the door, giving me one last smirk. "Don't worry, Harper. I've got everything handled." When the door clicked shut behind them, I exhaled slowly and pulled out my phone. My hand didn't shake this time. I dialed Claire Jennings, Ethan's trusted lawyer, and waited for her steady voice. "Claire, it's time," I said. We spent the next hour going over evidence, documents, and a plan that would turn tomorrow's ambush into a trap. Saturday dawned gray and drizzly, as if even the sky knew what was coming. Margaret's house was buzzing with activity by the time I arrived. 15 of Ethan's relatives were gathered inside, their chatter filling the halls like a courtroom before trial. I entered last, intentionally late. My heels clicked against the polished wood floor as every conversation stopped and heads turned toward me. In my hand, I carried Ethan's old leather portfolio filled with carefully organized evidence. Margaret sat regally in a high-backed chair at the head of the room, presiding like a judge. Liam stood by the fireplace, posture confident, holding the new lodge keys in his hand like trophies. Several cousins clustered around him, nodding approvingly. "Now that everyone's here," Margaret began, her voice commanding silence. "Liam has wonderful news about the lodge." "Ethan's lodge," I corrected softly. Taking a seat by the door, Margaret's lips tightened, but she didn't argue. "Liam, go ahead." Liam stepped forward, smiling like a politician. "Family takes care of family," he began. "Since Ethan's passing, I've been working tirelessly to maintain the lodge and protect it from neglect. I've already invested my own money. New furniture, upgraded locks, and security cameras scheduled for installation. My treat, of course," Cousin Mark clapped. Aunt Teresa nodded approvingly. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Margaret beamed. "Such sacrifice. Ethan would be proud," Liam continued, warming to his performance. "I've even lined up contractors for renovations to make the lodge more welcoming for everyone. This is about preserving Ethan's legacy." Every word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Ethan's legacy wasn't about communal ownership. It was about protecting me from exactly this moment. I stayed quiet, jotting notes in a small pad as if his speech fascinated me. When he finally finished, several relatives turned expectantly toward me, waiting for my obligatory gratitude. I closed my notebook and stood slowly. "Fascinating story, Liam," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. "There's just one problem." The room went silent. Liam frowned. "Problem?" "Yes," I met his gaze, unflinching. "Everything you've said today, every plan, every expense, every change to that property is completely and utterly illegal." A collective gasp swept through the room. Even Margaret's face paled. "What are you talking about?" Liam demanded. I set the portfolio on the table with a decisive thud. "Because the lodge isn't yours. It isn't Margaret's. It isn't this family's." I flipped open the portfolio and pulled out the first document. "It's mine." And tomorrow, they'd all see exactly what that meant. The room fell into stunned silence after my declaration. The only sound was the sharp tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, each beat echoing like a countdown. Margaret rose to her feet, color rising in her cheeks. "Now, Harper, let's not be dramatic. Liam's just trying to help." "Help?" I cut in, my voice steady. "Changing locks without permission. Moving furniture into my lodge. Telling everyone I agreed to a plan I never once approved." "That's not help, Margaret." "That's theft," gasps rippled through the room. Even a few cousins shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure how to respond. Before anyone could speak, the doorbell rang, its sharp chime cutting through the tension. Margaret frowned. Who could that be at this hour? I didn't move. "Someone I invited." Margaret opened the door, and Claire Jennings stepped inside. She was a tall woman with sharp features, dressed in a tailored navy suit, carrying a sleek black briefcase. Her presence filled the room with authority before she even said a word. "Good afternoon," Claire said coolly. "I'm Claire Jennings, attorney for Harper Daniels. I understand we're here to discuss a property matter." Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish. This is a family meeting." Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Property law doesn't recognize family meetings, Mrs. Daniels. It recognizes deeds, wills, and legal documents. Which I have right here." She set her briefcase on the coffee table and snapped it open with deliberate precision. The metallic click sounded like a gavel striking. "First," Claire began, pulling out a stack of papers, "this is the deed to the lodge in Silver Pine Valley. It clearly names Harper Daniels as the sole owner, a transfer made by Ethan Daniels 13 months ago. She handed copies to a few stunned relatives. Murmurs broke out immediately. "That's not possible," Liam barked. "Ethan wouldn't just—" Claire cut him off smoothly. "Oh, but he did. And here's the will, also naming Harper as the sole beneficiary of all property, including the lodge." Margaret sank back into her chair as if someone had pulled the strings from her spine. I stepped forward, my voice calm but cutting. Ethan knew this day might come. He wanted to make sure I was protected from anyone who might try to rewrite history. Liam's face turned crimson. "You can't just waltz in here with papers and—" Claire raised a hand. "Oh, we're not finished. Harper, please show them." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the small portable speaker I'd brought, and hit play. Liam's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Don't worry, Harper. I changed the locks, Family helps family. Another clip played, recorded during one of his smug phone calls. The lodge needs a man's touch. I've already started renovations. She'll thank me later. The relatives exchanged shocked glances. Aunt Teresa clutched her pearls like she'd just witnessed a crime, because she had. Claire didn't miss a beat. She pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. Liam's Instagram posts appeared, projected onto the TV in the corner. Liam on the lodge's deck, hammer in hand. The caption: renovating the family lodge to honor Ethan's memory. Photo of a barbecue with the hashtag your family first. Here's your so-called generosity, Claire said. Publicly documented with timestamps showing he began occupying the property within days of Ethan's death. A loud murmur swept through the room. Several cousins looked away, suddenly embarrassed by their own earlier praise of Liam's selflessness. I turned to face the crowd. While I was grieving, he was laying the groundwork to erase me. And he almost succeeded. Margaret's lips trembled. Liam, please tell me this isn't true. Liam jabbed a finger at me. She's twisting everything. This is our family's lodge, and she's trying to cut us out. No, Liam, I said quietly, deadly calm. This was never about family. It's about control. Before Liam could respond, the doorbell rang again. This time, louder, more forceful. Margaret startled. Now who? I gestured toward the door. Please open it. Margaret hesitated, then shuffled forward and pulled it open. Two uniformed officers stood there, rain glistening on their jackets. The taller one stepped inside with the practiced authority of someone used to taking control of tense situations. Good afternoon, he said. I'm Officer Daniel Carter. We received a report of breaking and entering related to the lodge in Silver Pine Valley. Liam's head snapped up. What? That's insane. It's my family's cabin. Officer Carter's gaze shifted to me. Are you Harper Daniels? Yes, sir, I said, holding my ground. I filed that report this morning. The room erupted into shocked whispers. Every eye turned to me. I reported that my brother-in-law changed the locks and moved into my property without permission, I explained calmly. I also have 15 witnesses who just heard him admit it. Liam went pale. You can't be serious. Claire smiled like a predator. Oh, she's very serious. And now everyone here is a witness to your confession. The weight of that realization settled over Liam like a heavy blanket. He looked around at the family members who had supported him moments before. Their faces were no longer adoring. They were horrified, distancing themselves from his mess. Even Margaret couldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Daniels, Officer Carter said, his voice even but firm, I need to inform you that this is a serious matter. You have two options: cooperate fully or face immediate arrest for criminal trespass. Liam's bravado faltered. His hands shook as he tried to form words, but nothing came out. I watched him struggle, a quiet storm raging inside me. He had gathered this family to witness my humiliation. Now, they were witnesses to his downfall. Liam stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Officer Carter didn't flinch. Mr. Daniels, he said, his tone clipped and professional. You have two options. You can vacate the property voluntarily within 24 hours and sign a legal agreement acknowledging you have no claim to it. Or, he paused, letting the silence stretch. No, you can be arrested right now for criminal trespass. The words landed like a thunderclap. The room erupted into frantic whispers. Margaret shot to her feet. Wait, there must be some mistake. He's grieving his brother, officer. Surely there's a way to settle this privately. There is a way, Officer Carter said evenly. Mrs. Daniels has already outlined it. Voluntary compliance and a restraining order. That's the only way to avoid criminal charges. Margaret turned to me, desperation in her eyes. Harper, please. He's family. My heart hardened like stone. Family doesn't get to steal from widows and call it love, I said quietly, but with enough force that everyone in the room heard it. Margaret recoiled as if I'd struck her. Liam shook his head violently. This is insane. That lodge has been in our family for generations. You can't just... Actually, Claire interrupted smoothly. The law says she can. You've admitted in front of 15 witnesses to changing the locks and occupying the property without permission. That's criminal trespass and attempted theft. Several cousins who had been firmly in Liam's corner minutes ago began inching away from him. Even Aunt Teresa, who had been beaming at his earlier speech, folded her arms and muttered, "This is a disgrace." One by one, the tide shifted. Their fantasy of a united family lodge crumbled under the weight of reality and legal documents. Margaret sank into her chair, covering her face with her hands. When she finally looked up, Her voice was barely a whisper. Liam might sign the papers. What? Liam's voice cracked. Sign them, she said, firmer this time. You've done enough damage. Liam stared at her, betrayal etched across his face. You're taking her side? I'm taking the side of the law, Margaret snapped. And Ethan's memory. This isn't what he would have wanted. For the first time, Liam seemed truly deflated. His shoulders slumped, and the fight drained out of him. Claire slid a stack of documents across the table. Here's the agreement. You will vacate the lodge within 24 hours. Pay $5,000 in damages for the unauthorized lock changes and security updates, and sign a restraining order prohibiting you from entering or discussing the property. Liam's hands shook as he picked up the pen. This is blackmail. No, Officer Carter said flatly. This is mercy. The alternative is jail time and a felony record. Margaret reached out, resting her trembling hand over his. Sign it, Liam, before you lose everything. His jaw clenched. But finally, with a shaky breath, he scrawled his name on the bottom line. The next 24 hours were a blur. I drove to the lodge at dawn, accompanied by a locksmith and Samantha, my vigilant neighbor. We watched as Liam loaded his furniture into a U-Haul like a man fleeing the scene of a crime, which, technically, he was. By noon, he was gone. Every lock was changed again. This time, only my keys would open them. I installed cameras, upgraded the alarm system, and restored the lodge to what it had been before Liam's invasion. A sanctuary, not a battlefield. Word of the confrontation spread quickly through town. Clients began canceling contracts with Liam's construction business. His reputation collapsed like a rotting deck under too much weight. Margaret sent a Christmas card 3 months later. No apology, no message, just her signature. It said everything I needed to know. One chilly afternoon while cleaning the storage shed, I found something unexpected. A sealed envelope tucked behind an old tackle box. My hands trembled as I opened it and saw Ethan's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, Harper, it means Liam tried something. I knew he would. That's why everything is in your name. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to fight for what's yours. Promise me you'll use the law, not anger. Make him face consequences. I love you forever. Ethan tears blurred my vision as I held the letter to my chest. Ethan had known. Even in death, he was still protecting me. 6 months later, I sat on the lodge's porch, watching the sunrise paint Silver Pine Valley in shades of gold. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. This place had been scarred by betrayal, but it was healing, just like me. Family isn't about blood, I whispered to the quiet morning. It's about respect, and sometimes respect has to be enforced by law. I thought of Liam, diminished and bitter, and of Margaret, silent at last. I thought of Ethan's letter and the love that had built this place. The lodge was mine again. Truly, completely mine. I turned to the camera set up beside me and spoke directly to those watching my story unfold. Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect what's yours? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep supporting each other through stories like this. You are stronger than you think, I said with a small, fierce smile. And you are never alone.